Run your hand down your arm. You'll feel them. Tiny hairs. Thin, pale, almost invisible. You have about 5 million of these follicles spread across your body, which is roughly the same number as a chimpanzee your size. Read that again. You are not actually a hairless animal. You have just as many hair-producing pores as an ape. So why do you look naked and a chimp looks covered? Why are you the only primate on Earth that walks around with bare skin? You probably think the answer is obvious. We got smart. We made clothes. We made fire. We didn't need fur anymore. But the real answer is far stranger than that, and it begins millions of years before the first stitch of clothing ever existed. Picture the African savanna around 2 million years ago. The trees are thinning out. The cool shade of the forest is shrinking. Your ancestors are being pushed into the open, into the sun, into the heat. And the heat is the key to everything. A body covered in thick fur is a body that traps warmth. That is wonderful at night, in a cold forest. It is deadly at noon, on an open plain, while you are trying to chase down a meal. Your ancestors had a problem that almost no other large animal had solved. They needed to move fast, in the heat of the day, without cooking themselves from the inside. So how do you cool a running body? The biologist Peter Wheeler spent years studying exactly this question. He modeled how an upright bipedal body behaves under the African sun. Standing tall, he found, exposes far less of your body to the overhead sun than standing on 4 legs. But standing up was only half the trick. The other half was the skin itself. Most mammals cool down by panting. A dog runs, then stops, opens its mouth, and breathes out heat. It cannot do both at once. It cannot sprint and cool down in the same moment. That is a hard ceiling on how far and how long an animal can chase. Your ancestors broke through that ceiling. They did it by turning their skin into a radiator. Here is where it gets remarkable. Buried in your skin are between 2 and 4 million sweat glands. Not the kind that make you smell. These are eccrine glands, and they pump out watery sweat directly onto the surface of your skin. When that water evaporates, it pulls heat away with it. You are, quite literally, a self-cooling machine. And almost no other animal on the planet can do this the way you do. But sweat has an enemy: fur. If you are drenched in sweat under a thick coat of hair, the water just sits there. It soaks the fur. It cannot evaporate quickly. The cooling system jams. So, to make sweating work, something else had to give. The fur had to thin out. The skin had to come into the open air, where moving wind could lift the moisture away and carry the heat with it. Do you see what happened? You did not lose your fur because you got clever. You lost your fur because you became a runner. This is the idea championed by the Harvard biologist Daniel Lieberman. He calls humans endurance athletes by evolution, not sprinters. Sprinters lose. A deer will always beat you in a short race. But over miles, in the rising heat of the afternoon, something flips. The deer overheats. It has to stop. It pants. It cannot lose heat fast enough. And a naked, sweating human, jogging steadily, just keeps coming, and coming, and coming. It is called persistence hunting. You do not outrun your prey. You outsuffer it. You follow an animal for hours until its body, trapped in its own fur, simply gives up. Some hunter-gatherer groups were still doing this within living memory. Your bare skin is not a sign of weakness. It is a weapon. But heat is only one half of the story, because evolution rarely does anything for a single reason. Think about what fur actually is, up close. It is a warm, dense, humid forest. And in that forest lives an entire ecosystem you would rather not meet. Lice, fleas, ticks, mites, parasites that bite, that spread disease, that drain you slowly. The thicker the fur, the more places there are for them to hide. The evolutionary biologist Mark Pagel proposed something clever about this. Once your ancestors had already started losing fur, for whatever reason, being even less hairy suddenly carried a bonus. Fewer parasites, fewer infections, a body that was harder for bloodsuckers to colonize. And here is the part Pagel found fascinating. If bare skin signaled health, then it could become attractive. A potential mate covered in fewer parasites is a safer, healthier partner. So smooth skin might have become something your ancestors actively preferred. Something they chose, generation after generation. Which brings us to the oldest idea of all, the one Charles Darwin himself reached for. Darwin looked at human hairlessness and could not explain it with survival alone. So he turned to sexual selection. Maybe, he thought, we lost our fur simply because we found bare skin beautiful. Because the partners who chose smoother mates left behind more children. Over time, the preference sculpts the species. But notice something strange about the way it sculpted us. You are not evenly bare. Look at where you kept your hair. The top of your head, fully exposed to the vertical sun, where a thick mat could shield your brain from overheating. And then the few warm, sheltered places on the body where, conveniently, scent collects. This is not the pattern of an animal that simply gave up its coat. This is a redesign, targeted, specific, kept where it helped, removed where it hurt. So when did all this actually happen? We cannot dig up fur. Skin and hair rot away and leave no fossils. So for a long time, this was a mystery with no clock. Then scientists found one in the most unexpected place, in a louse. The anthropologist Nina Jablonski has written about this elegantly. Humans, it turns out, carry more than one species of louse. We have head lice, and we have body lice. And body lice are special. They do not live on skin at all. They live in clothing. They evolved to cling to fabric, which means body lice could only have appeared after humans started wearing clothes. So researchers studied the DNA of these lice. They worked out roughly when body lice split off from head lice, and the answer landed somewhere around 100,000 to 170,000 years ago. Sit with that number for a moment. Your ancestors lost their fur up to 2 million years ago, but they did not start wearing clothes until maybe 170,000 years ago, at the earliest. That is a gap of well over 1 million years. More than 1 million years of human beings walking the earth completely naked. No fur, no clothing, just bare skin under an open sky. You were naked first. The clothes came much, much later. And that long stretch of nakedness left a deep mark on your body, in a way you might never have guessed. When your ancestors lost their fur, their bare skin was suddenly exposed to brutal ultraviolet radiation from the African sun. Pale skin under that sun would have burned. And worse, the radiation destroys folate, a nutrient your body needs to reproduce. So the skin adapted. Nina Jablonski and the geographer George Chaplin mapped this across the entire globe. As humans lost fur, their newly exposed skin grew dark with melanin, a natural sunscreen. Then, much later, as some populations migrated far from the equator into weak northern sunlight, their skin lightened again to soak up enough sun to make vitamin D. Think about what that means. The entire spectrum of human skin color, every shade that exists on Earth, only happened because we lost our fur in the first place. The colors are a fingerprint of an ancient, naked migration across a planet. So let's return to the question. Why did ancient humans stop having fur? Not because we got smart, not because we invented clothes. The clothes were an afterthought, arriving 1 million years too late to be the cause. We lost our fur because we were pushed into the sun. Because we became creatures who could run in the heat when nothing else could. Because bare skin meant fewer parasites, and fewer parasites meant healthier mates, and healthier mates were chosen, again and again, until smoothness was written into us. We lost our fur because for a long and forgotten age, being naked was the thing that kept us alive. You are the descendant of the animal that gave up its coat to chase the sun. So run your hand down your arm one more time. Those tiny hairs are not the leftovers of something you lost. They are the quiet record of the strangest decision your species ever made. The day your ancestors stepped out of the shade, shed their fur into the wind, and turned their own bare skin into the reason they survived.